This story is about my missing friend, Emma. It's something that still haunts me every day, and I want to tell you what happened because maybe it will help you understand how quickly things can turn dark when you least expect it. So, listen carefully. This is the story of my missing friend. Emma and I had been best friends since high school. We shared everything: secrets, dreams, and even our love for late-night adventures. Emma was the kind of person who was full of life, always smiling and ready to explore new places. One summer, she told me about an old abandoned house at the edge of town. The house had been empty for years, and people said it was haunted. Of course, that made Emma even more curious. One Friday evening, Emma called me. "Let's go check out the old house," she said. "I want to see if the stories are true." I wasn't sure. I'd heard some scary tales about the house, voices in the night, shadows moving behind the windows. But Emma was excited, and I didn't want to be the one who backed down. So we agreed to meet at her place around 8 p.m. I remember how the sun was setting when I arrived, painting the sky in orange and purple. We packed some flashlights and snacks just in case, and set off toward the house. The walk was short, but felt longer in the fading light. The streets grew quieter, and the houses older. When we reached the abandoned house, it looked even creepier than I expected. The windows were broken, and the door was hanging loosely on its hinges. The garden was overgrown with weeds, and vines climbed up the walls like fingers. Emma pushed the door open, and we stepped inside. The air was cold and musty, thick with dust. The floorboards creaked beneath our feet. We shone our flashlights around, revealing peeling wallpaper, broken furniture, and cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. We started exploring room by room. Emma was fearless, moving ahead, while I followed closely, trying to keep calm. In one room, we found a small diary lying on the floor. It looked old, with a cracked leather cover. Emma picked it up and started reading. The diary belonged to a girl named Lily, who had lived in the house many years ago. Her words told a story of loneliness and strange noises at night. She wrote about hearing whispers and seeing shadows that no one else could see. As Emma read aloud, I felt a chill run down my spine. Suddenly, we heard a noise, like footsteps on the stairs above us. We froze. Emma whispered, "Maybe someone else is here." We decided to be brave and check it out. We walked up the narrow staircase, the wooden steps groaning under our weight. When we reached the top, the hallway was dark and cold. The flashlight beam barely cut through the shadows. At the end of the hall, we saw a door slightly open. Emma pushed it, and we peeked inside. The room was empty, except for an old rocking chair that was moving slowly back and forth, as if someone had just left it. I wanted to leave, but Emma was curious. "Let's look around," she said. We stepped inside, but as we did, the door slammed shut behind us. I screamed, and Emma tried to open the door, but it was stuck. Then, the room grew colder, and the shadows seemed to move closer. The flashlight flickered, and the whispering started. Soft voices calling our names. "Emma. Sarah," the voices said. We were terrified. I grabbed Emma's hand, and we huddled together. Suddenly, the diary in Emma's hand began to glow faintly. The pages flipped on their own, stopping at a page with a drawing of a girl standing outside the house looking scared. Emma read the words aloud. "The house keeps the lost inside. Once you enter, it does not let go." I realized then we were trapped, caught by something in the house that didn't want us to leave. We tried the door again, and this time it opened slowly. We didn't wait to see what was behind it. We ran down the stairs, out of the house, and didn't stop until we reached the streetlights. Emma was shaking but smiling nervously. "That was insane," she said. We agreed never to speak about it again. But a few days later, Emma disappeared. She left no note, no message, nothing. I searched everywhere. Her house, the abandoned house, even called the police. But it was like she vanished into thin air. One night, weeks after she was gone, I had a dream. I was back in that old house, standing in the dark room with the rocking chair. And Emma was there, but not really. Her eyes were empty and she whispered, "Help me." I woke up sweating and terrified. From that day on, I started hearing whispers around my own house. Soft voices calling my name. Sometimes I swear I see shadows moving just beyond my vision. I know the house took Emma, and it might come for me next. I don't know if she's alive, or just a shadow trapped in that haunted place, but I do know this. Sometimes curiosity leads to things we can't escape. So, if you ever find yourself near an abandoned house where the air feels cold and the silence is too thick, think twice before stepping inside. Because some places hold on to people, and some friends go missing forever. That's the story of my missing friend Emma. I hope you never have to face something like this. But if you do, remember, some doors should never be opened. This story is about my missing friend, Michael. It's something that happened not too long ago, and even now, when I think about it, my heart races. I'm going to tell you what happened because maybe, just maybe, it will warn you about things you don't expect when you think you're just having fun. So, listen carefully. This is the story of my missing friend. Michael and I have been friends since childhood. We grew up in a small town, the kind where everyone knows each other. We always loved exploring the outdoors, forests, abandoned buildings, anywhere that seemed a little mysterious. One day, Michael told me about an old quarry just outside of town. He said it was a great place to hang out, but nobody went there anymore because it was dangerous and, well, kind of creepy. It was a Friday evening when Michael called me. His voice was excited but also nervous. "Hey, I found this place," he said. "The quarry. It's perfect for camping overnight. Want to come with me?" I hesitated for a moment. I'd heard some weird stories about the quarry. Stories about people hearing strange noises and seeing shadows moving when no one else was around. But Michael was convincing, and I didn't want to be the one who missed out. So, I agreed. We planned to meet at Michael's house around dusk. I remember how the sky was turning orange as I got there. We packed some food, a flashlight, and a few blankets. The quarry was about a 30-minute walk through the woods, and the path was already dark when we started. The forest around us was thick, with tall trees that blocked out most of the remaining light. The air was cool and smelled like earth and wet leaves. I could feel the silence pressing on me, the kind of silence where even your own breathing sounds loud. When we finally reached the quarry, it was even more eerie than I expected. The ground was rough and rocky, with deep pits filled with dark water. The walls of the quarry rose high like cliffs, casting long shadows in the moonlight. Michael found a flat spot near the edge and started setting up our small camp. As we sat there eating, I noticed Michael was quieter than usual. He kept glancing toward one part of the quarry, where the rocks seemed to form a narrow cave entrance, half hidden by hanging vines. "Want to check that out?" he asked me. I said no at first. Something about that dark opening felt wrong. But Michael was stubborn. He said, "Come on, just a quick look." So we grabbed the flashlight and walked over. The cave entrance was small, just big enough for a person to crawl through. The air coming from inside was cold and smelled damp, like something had been there for a long time. We went inside, shining the light ahead. The walls were wet and slimy, and the ground was uneven. I felt like the darkness was alive, pressing in on us from every side. After about 10 minutes, we found something strange, a pile of old clothes and a few broken bottles. It looked like someone had been living here, or hiding. Michael bent down and picked up a small, worn-out notebook. The pages were torn and stained, but some words were still readable. It was a diary, written by someone who called themselves Jay. The entries talked about being trapped, about hearing voices in the dark, about things moving just out of sight. I started feeling uneasy. "Maybe we should leave this place," I said. Michael nodded. But just then, we heard a sound, a low scraping noise coming from deeper inside the cave. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Michael shined the flashlight toward the noise, but the light flickered and went out. I panicked and tried to turn it back on, but nothing worked. Suddenly, the scraping stopped, replaced by a soft whisper. It wasn't like normal talking, more like a breath, a sound just beyond hearing. I grabbed Michael's arm. "We have to get out of here. We crawled back toward the entrance, but the ground seemed to shift beneath us. The walls felt closer, the darkness thicker. I could hear the whispering growing louder, almost calling our names. Finally, we burst out of the cave into the cold night air, gasping for breath. Michael looked shaken. "Let's pack up and go," he said. We hurried to our camp, but when we got there, the blankets were gone. Our food was scattered, as if someone or something had been there while we were in the cave. I looked around, but everything was silent. No sign of movement except the shadows stretching across the rocks. We packed quickly and started walking back through the forest. The path that had been clear before now looked strange and unfamiliar. The trees seemed to lean in, blocking our way. After about 20 minutes, I looked back and realized Michael wasn't with me. "Michael!" I called out. No answer. I ran back toward where I had last seen him, calling his name louder and louder, but all I heard was the whispering again, soft and cold, coming from the shadows between the trees. I kept searching until I reached a small clearing where the moonlight shone bright. And there, standing still and silent, was Michael. But he didn't move when I called him. His eyes were wide and blank, and his skin looked pale, almost glowing in the moonlight. "Michael!" I shouted, running to him. He turned his head slowly, but his face was empty, like a mask. Then he whispered, not with his voice, but like the voices from the cave, cold, distant, and frightening. "You shouldn't have come," it said. Before I could react, Michael reached out his hand, but it wasn't really him anymore. I felt a cold chill shoot through my body, and everything went black. When I woke up, I was alone in the forest, lying on the cold ground. Michael was gone. I tried to find him again, but it was like he disappeared into thin air. I told people what happened, but they didn't believe me. They said maybe he wandered off or got lost, but I know the truth. That night, I still hear whispers sometimes, quiet and close, like someone standing just behind me. I never went back to that quarry, and I never stopped looking for my missing friend, Michael. Because somewhere out there, he's still waiting, trapped between shadows and silence, calling for help. And I don't know if I'll ever find him. So, if you ever hear about a missing friend near an old quarry or a dark cave, don't go looking alone. Some places are not meant for us, and some friends never really leave. This story is about something that happened to me and my friend Jake. I don't usually talk about it because it still scares me to this day, but I think you should hear it. Maybe it will help you understand what can happen when you don't listen to warnings. So, here it is, the story of my missing friend. It all began on a chilly autumn weekend about 3 years ago. Jake and I had just finished college, and we wanted to take one last trip before starting our new jobs. Jake was always the adventurous type, the kind of guy who loved exploring abandoned places and searching for forgotten stories. One day he called me and said, "Hey, there's an old cabin deep in the woods outside town. They say it's been empty for decades. Let's check it out this weekend." I wasn't sure at first. I'd heard strange things about that forest, stories of people disappearing, strange noises at night. But Jake was excited, and I didn't want to be the one to ruin the plan. So, I agreed. On Saturday morning, we packed our bags and drove out to the edge of the forest. The trees were tall and close together, their branches blocking most of the sunlight. The air smelled damp and earthy, and the ground was covered with dead leaves that crunched under our boots. We walked for almost 2 hours, following an old dirt trail Jake had found on a map. The forest grew thicker the deeper we went, and I started feeling a little nervous. Jake kept saying things like, "Don't worry, this is what makes it exciting." But I could tell even he was a bit uneasy. Finally, we found the cabin. It was small, made of old wood that had started to rot with a rusty metal roof. The windows were cracked, and the door hung off its hinges. It looked like nobody had been there for a long time. Jake was already moving toward it, flashlight in hand. "Let's see what's inside," he said with a grin. I followed him reluctantly. Inside, the air was cold and smelled like dust and mold. The floorboards creaked under our feet. There was an old fireplace with ashes still in it, and some broken furniture covered in sheets. but what caught my attention was a small wooden box on a table in the corner. Jake went over and opened it, carefully. Inside, there were several old photographs in a leather-bound journal. The pictures were black and white, showing people dressed in clothes from 100 years ago. But when Jake started flipping through the journal, I noticed something strange. The handwriting wasn't like any I'd ever seen. The letters were twisted and sharp, almost like claws. As Jake read aloud, his voice started to shake. "Listen to this," he said. "The forest takes what it wants. Those who linger too long will never return. The shadows watch, and the whisper calls." I laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. "Sounds like an old ghost story," Jake smiled, but put the journal back in the box. Suddenly, we heard a noise outside, like something brushing against the cabin walls. We both froze. Jake said, "Probably just the wind." But I wasn't so sure. We decided to leave, but as we stepped outside, the sky had turned dark and a thick fog had rolled in. We couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. The trees around us seemed to close in, and the air grew colder. As we made our way back down the trail, I noticed something was wrong. Jake was quiet, almost distracted. Then he stopped and said, "I think we're going in circles." I looked around, but everything seemed unfamiliar. The trail markers we had seen earlier were gone, replaced by strange, twisted branches that looked like fingers reaching out. We walked for what felt like hours, but we couldn't find the way back. The forest seemed endless. Then I heard it, a soft whisper coming from behind the trees. It was faint but clear, calling Jake's name. "Jake," it whispered. He turned around slowly, eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" he asked. I nodded, but I didn't want to look back. The whisper grew louder, almost like a song. I grabbed Jake's arm. "We need to keep moving." But then Jake said something that still haunts me. "I think I'm going to follow it." "No," I shouted, but he was already stepping toward the sound. I tried to pull him back, but he broke free and disappeared into the fog. I called his name again and again, but there was no answer. I ran after him, pushing through thick bushes and tangled vines, but it was like the forest swallowed him whole. The whispering stopped, and an unbearable silence took its place. Hours later, I found my way back to the edge of the forest, alone. I told the police everything, but they didn't find any sign of Jake. No footprints, no broken branches, nothing. Days turned into weeks, and I kept hoping he would come back, but he never did. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear that whisper, soft and distant, calling my name. I try to ignore it, but it gets louder, stronger. I'm afraid one day, it will call me into the forest too. I've learned something important from this. Some places are better left alone. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. And if you ever find yourself in a dark forest, hearing your name being whispered from the shadows, don't follow it, because you might not come back. That's the story of my missing friend Jake. I hope you never have to live through something like this. But if you do, remember my words. Be careful what you listen to in the dark. This story is about something that happened to me and my closest friend Arjun. I've never told anyone before because it feels too strange, too scary to believe. But now, I want you to hear it. And maybe you'll understand why I still get nervous whenever I think about it. It all started one rainy evening, almost 2 years ago. Arjun and I were college friends, always up for an adventure or a challenge. One day, he called me excitedly and said, "Hey, I found a new hiking trail deep in the forest near the old abandoned village. Want to come this weekend?" I hesitated, a bit because I had heard stories about that place. Old, creepy, and no one really went there anymore. But Arjun was so enthusiastic that I couldn't say no. We planned to leave early Saturday morning. Arjun promised it would be fun, just a simple hike and maybe some camping. When the day came, we packed our bags, took some food and water, and set off. The forest was dense, with tall trees blocking the sunlight, and the air smelled damp and wild. The trail was harder than I expected. The ground was muddy from the rain, and the path was narrow, sometimes disappearing under thick bushes. But Arjun was full of energy, leading the way with his usual smile. We joked and laughed, making the hike enjoyable despite the difficult terrain. After walking for about 3 hours, we finally reached the edge of the abandoned village. It looked frozen in time. Old houses with broken windows, empty streets overgrown with weeds, and a strange silence hanging in the air. Arjun wanted to explore, but I felt uneasy. There was something wrong about the place. As we walked through the village, Arjun suddenly stopped and pointed to a small house at the end of the street. "Let's check that out," he said. I noticed the door was slightly open, creaking softly in the wind. I wanted to say no, but Arjun was already pushing it open. Inside, the house was dark and dusty. Broken furniture lay scattered, and cobwebs covered the corners. We shone our flashlights around, trying to find something interesting. Then, Arjun found a strange old wooden box under the stairs. It looked handmade with carvings I didn't recognize. "Let's open it," he whispered, excitement clear in his voice. I wasn't sure why, but a cold feeling ran down my spine. Something told me not to touch it, but Arjun was already lifting the lid. Inside the box, there was a small, worn-out book wrapped in cloth. Arjun carefully took it out and started flipping through the pages. The writing was strange, not like any language I'd seen before. The symbols looked sharp and twisted, like something out of a nightmare. Suddenly, a loud thud came from upstairs. We froze. I said, "Maybe we should leave." Arjun agreed, but as we turned to go, the door slammed shut behind us. We were trapped. I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. Arjun tried too, but the handle didn't move. Then the lights from our flashlights flickered and went out. We were in total darkness, the air thick and cold. That's when we heard it. A low whisper coming from the walls around us. It sounded like a voice, but twisted and broken. The whisper grew louder, filling the room, and I could swear I felt something moving in the shadows. I grabbed Arjun's arm. "We need to get out," I whispered, panic rising in my chest. Suddenly, the door creaked open just a little. We pushed it and ran out of the house, gasping for fresh air. Outside, the forest seemed different, darker, heavier, as if watching us. We decided to pack up and leave the village immediately. But as we walked back, Arjun looked behind him and stopped cold. "Did you hear that?" he asked. I didn't hear anything, but before I could answer, I saw it. A figure standing at the edge of the trees, just beyond the village. It was tall and thin, with long limbs and no face. Just a dark shadow where its face should have been. It didn't move, just watched us silently. I felt my heart pound. "Arjun, we need to run." We started running, not looking back. The forest felt alive with noises. Branches snapping, leaves rustling, and that same low whisper following us. After what felt like forever, we reached the main road where a few cars passed by. We stopped, gasping for breath. Arjun looked at me, his face pale. "Did you keep the book?" he asked quietly. I realized he still had it in his bag. I didn't want it, but he wouldn't let me throw it away. That night, we stayed in a nearby town. I tried to forget everything, but the book kept appearing in my dreams. The twisted symbols glowing, the whispering voice calling my name. The next day, Arjun disappeared. We were having breakfast when he suddenly said, "I need to go back there. I need to understand the book." I begged him not to, but he was determined. He took his bag and left without another word. Hours passed, and he didn't return. I called his phone. No answer. I went to the abandoned village myself, hoping to find him, or at least some clue. But there was nothing. No sign of Arjun anywhere. I reported him missing to the police, but they didn't believe me when I talked about the forest, the book, or the shadow figure. They said he probably left town or something, but I knew better. A few days later, I got a message on my phone. It was from Arjun's number. The message was one word: help. I tried calling back, but no answer. Then the whispering started again, not just in dreams, but in my house. At first, I thought I was going crazy. It was soft, like someone standing behind me, whispering words I couldn't understand. One night, I woke up to find the book open on my table. The symbols were glowing, faintly. I touched the page and a cold shock ran through my hand. The whispering grew louder, filling the room. I looked at the mirror across the room. For a moment, I thought I saw Arjun's face behind me, pale and scared. But when I turned around, there was nothing. I decided to get rid of the book. I took it to a river and threw it into the water, hoping it would sink and disappear forever. For a few days, everything was quiet. No whispering, no strange dreams. But then I started hearing footsteps outside my door. Slow, deliberate steps that stopped whenever I looked out. Last night, I woke up to find a note slipped under my door. It was written in the same strange symbols from the book. I don't understand what it says, but it feels like a warning. I'm scared now. Every shadow in my room looks alive. Every sound makes me jump. I don't know what happened to Arjun, or what's following me. But I know one thing. That forest, that village, and that book. They are not just old stories. They're real. And if you ever hear about a missing friend near an abandoned village, don't go looking. Because sometimes, when you lose someone, it's not because they left. It's because something took them, and maybe it's coming for you next. This is the story of something that happened to me and my friends 2 years ago. A story I still can't talk about without getting chills. I don't know if you'll believe me, but I swear, everything I'm about to say is true. It started during the summer break after college ended. Me, my best friend Rahul, and 2 other friends, Sneha and Vikram, decided to go on a short trip before we all went our separate ways for jobs and life. We chose a quiet hill town, far from the city noise, with thick forests, cool weather, and very few tourists. The kind of place where you feel like time slows down. We booked a small cottage on the edge of a forest, cheap and peaceful. Everything felt perfect. We reached by bus in the afternoon. The cottage was old but cozy, with wooden floors that creaked when you walked. The forest behind it was so dense, it looked like a green wall. The caretaker, an old man with tired eyes, warned us not to go too deep into the woods. He said people had gotten lost before. We laughed it off. Rahul even joked, maybe we'll find a secret treasure or a ghost bride. We all laughed. That was typical Rahul. Always the brave one, always making jokes. The first night was fine. We played cards, told stupid ghost stories, and slept like babies. But the second night, that's when it began. Around midnight, we heard something. A strange sound coming from the forest. It was like a whistle, but not the kind people make. It was high-pitched, slow, and it repeated every few seconds. We froze. Vikram looked out the window and said, maybe it's just the wind. But we knew it wasn't. Rahul, being Rahul, said, I'm gonna check it out. We told him not to, begged him. But he laughed, grabbed a flashlight and said, I'll be back in 5 minutes. Relax. We waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 20. No sign of him. Sneha started to panic. Vikram and I grabbed our flashlights and went into the forest. We called his name. No answer. The whistle sound had stopped too. Everything was too quiet. No bugs, no leaves rustling, no nothing. Just this dead silence that made my skin crawl. We searched for almost an hour. Then we saw it. Rahul's flashlight lying on the ground. Its light still on. But no Rahul, no footprints, nothing. Just the flashlight, lying there like someone had just dropped it and disappeared. We returned to the cottage, terrified. Sneha was crying. Vikram was pacing. I called the local police, but they said we had to wait till morning to search properly. People don't usually go missing here, the officer said. He'll be back by morning. But morning came, and Rahul didn't. The police came, searched the forest, brought dogs, drones, everything. Nothing. It was like he had vanished into thin air. No trace, no struggle, no blood, nothing. We stayed another night, just hoping, praying. He'd return. That night I had the worst dream of my life. In the dream, I was in the forest. It was night, but I could see. Everything was lit by a strange blue light. I saw Rahul standing between the trees. He looked at me, but his face, it wasn't right. His eyes were too wide. His smile stretched unnaturally across his face. And then he opened his mouth, and that same whistle sound came out. Slow, high-pitched, just like before. I woke up screaming. Sneha said she had a similar dream. Same light, same whistle, same smile. We left the very next morning. There was nothing more we could do. Weeks passed. Police still had no clue. Rahul was declared missing. His parents were shattered. We all were. Months later, I got a message on my phone. It was from an unknown number. It just said, "Come back." That's it. I ignored it. But then, every night for a week, I heard that whistle again. Not outside, inside my house. It would come from my closet, my bathroom, even under my bed. One night, I got up the courage and followed the sound. It led me to my mirror. I looked into it, and for a second, I saw him. Rahul. But again, his face wasn't right. That horrible smile, that wide, lifeless stare. And he mouthed something I'll never forget. "Bring them all." The mirror shattered. I stopped sleeping after that. I moved cities, changed my number. But the dreams didn't stop. Last month, Vikram went missing. He was out hiking near a hill station. They found his bag and phone, but not him. The same pattern. Just gone. Sneha won't answer my calls now. She's scared too. She told me last time we spoke, she heard the whistle outside her apartment, and her mirror cracked on its own. I think we brought something back from that forest. Or maybe we left something behind. Something Rahul found. Or worse, something that found him. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear the whistle. I try to cover my ears, but it gets inside my head. I'm telling you this because maybe if you ever go to a quiet hill town and someone warns you about the forest, listen to them. Don't be like us. Don't be brave. Don't be curious. Because if you hear that sound, that slow, eerie whistle, it means something has seen you and it doesn't want you to leave. That's the story of how I lost my best friend and maybe a part of myself too.